Hi, all. Nice to see some friendly faces. I'm Lynn Barrett, president of the board of Vermont Independent Media, publisher of The Commons. Tonight's discussion is part of our media mentoring project that seeks to empower all of us to be re-involved in local media. Our next scheduled event will be on Thursday, November 30th, and it's about solutions journalism, which is really where the media is not just covering what's gone wrong, but focusing on responses to problems and what there is to learn about their successes and failures. So hopefully, and you'll be hearing more about that soon, and hopefully we'll see you there as well. Just a few notes. We do encourage questions, and if you could please put them in the chat, that would be great. Our moderator is Joyce Marcel, award-winning journalist who writes all of the cover stories for Vermont Business Magazine, and she is, of course, the Commons political writer. She'll introduce each of our panelists, and now, here's Joyce.
Hi, everyone. I am going to be reading some of this. I hope you forgive me. But I just wanted to say before we started that when I first heard the topic, I wasn't quite sure you could make an argument that art causes social change because the world is such a mess right now in this war-torn, disintegrating planet, scary and unjust wars in Ukraine and Palestine, climate change, right-wing dictators, religious fanatics, Republicans who hate democracy and want to close down our government, book censorship, sex censorship, attacks on gays and transgendered people. I can go on. Where is some social change? We need it. Does art ever make social change? But when I thought about it, art has changed the world many, many times. My own work, journalism, has made social change. I can think of a lot of books that have, Upton Sinclair, George Orwell, and Elayne's going to talk about that. Visual art. You always think of Picasso's Guernica first, but he painted it after the town was blown up, and his side lost anyway, and led to decades of Franco's dictatorship. But think about those Banksy images that are getting blown up in the Ukraine and in Gaza. Art never gets the credit, but it's kind of a way to slide truth past people and hope some of it sticks. One image can be more powerful than 100 news stories. Art has a power, even if it doesn't always win. If it didn't, then the authoritarians wouldn't be devoting so much of their energy to blowing art up, censoring books, painting over murals. Art can clarify an event. It can clarify a movement. Art carries ideas, and it is like water. It's seeping through the cracks. It can't be contained. And now I'd like to introduce our panelists. The first speaker is going to be Elayne Clift. And she is an award-winning writer and journalist whose work has appeared in the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, the Christian Science Monitor, the Chronicle of Higher Education, Salon.com, and in numerous magazines, periodicals, and anthologies. She is a regular columnist for several New England newspapers and a reviewer for the New York Journal of Books. The author of 2 memoirs, 2 books of poetry, 3 short story collections, a travel memoir, and 3 edited anthologies. She offers writing workshops at various venues ranging from conferences, libraries, and art programs. The next speaker is going to be Nancy Wolfe. Nancy's work merges filmmaking with journalism, archives, writing, and teaching at Democracy Now! And elsewhere. In 2016, as an executive producer on feature documentary Fit to Print, chronicling the demise of watchdog reporting, her directorial debut, Rocky Flats, was selected by the 2021 Doc New York City Film Festival's industry program and has received funding from the Outrider Foundation, among others. And she's going to talk about her work. Then we have Jeanette Staley. Jeanette is a research-based collage artist, educator, and activist in Westminster, Vermont. She is an MFA from Vermont College of Fine Art. Her studio practice is focused on understanding how the patriarchal system is the foundation of inequality and justice as she works to educate and dismantle the system. Her protesting began with Clarence Thomas and has not wavered. Last year, she organized protest and advocacy sign art making over 80 people in Bellows Falls, causing them to parade through the village in protest of the overturning of Roe and in support of women's health care. Negina Azimi was born in 1999 in Kabul, Afghanistan. As a refugee, she arrived in Brattleboro, Vermont in April 2022, carrying only a backpack filled with the weight of unfinished hopes for her country, seeking safety in a French start. She holds a degree in law and has a background in the arts. In 2017, she had the opportunity to work as a mural artist with ArtLords, an organization dedicated to using art to promote positive change. Through her artwork, she says, she aimed to inspire hope, challenge social norms, and advocate for justice and equality. She's now working in Brattleboro, and we're very, very lucky to have her and another art lord, Abdullah. He was born in Panjshir. Did I say that right, Abdullah? Afghanistan, migrated to Pakistan in 1999 and grew up there, where he studied drawing, painting, Persian calligraphy, Persian miniatures, learned and taught English as a second language, and graduated from high school. He moved back to Kabul in 2016, completed his bachelor degree in computer science, as well as worked as an IT trainer for 3 years. He also painted wall murals with themes of social transformation and peace building with the artists collective ArtLords as a part-time profession. When the Taliban took over the control of Kabul, he had to flee and found himself in Brattleboro, Vermont. He is now rebuilding his life, finding new ways to make cross-cultural, collaborative murals with different regional artists, using different mediums, and pursuing his artistic career with ArtLords. Currently, he is studying at the Community College of Vermont and looking forward to his master's degree in arts and design. Well, you couldn't have a better panel, I don't think. This is wonderful. And we're going to start out with you, Elayne. So if you wanted to say anything more, if I didn't get all of your credits in my intro, then take it away, Elayne.
Thank you, Joyce. And I'm not going to add anything else because then I really sound old. So hello, everybody. I'm very, very pleased to be here to join this panel in exploring the various ways that creative communication can contribute to social change. Oh, sorry, I hit that by mistake. Okay, sorry about that. And I think that, thinking about creative communications and how it contributes to social change has never been more important. We, as Joyce pointed out, we are living in a time of anxiety and political and cultural dysfunction that is really quite dystopian. It's a time that calls for heightened awareness, balanced viewpoints, critical dialogue, viable actions, and conscious, compassionate analysis as we contemplate our individual and our collective values, our knowledge, our attitudes, and our assumptions. As we communication specialists know, and creative people know, strategic communication is a great tool and a great guide in meeting those kinds of objectives. But I think very few people realize how many various channels there are for creating social change and raising awareness and all the things that I just mentioned. It's really good. There's so many channels for sharing information, inspiring action that goes beyond what we sort of quickly think of when we talk about letters to the editor, writing op-eds, writing columns, doing petitions, doing marches, donating money. Because really, there are so many communication channels. There's art, there's literature. I think there's a slide going to come up. There's There we go. So, as a writer, I think about literature a lot, and these are just some of the books in the canon of what I would call resistance literature. The Jungle by I think the Jungle's not up here. Yeah, The Jungle by Upton Sinclair was very, very important as a resistance work. 1984, John Hershey's Hiroshima, anything James Baldwin writes. These are all novels or nonfiction books, but I also want to be sure when I say literature, I'm talking about poetry. I'm talking about plays, any of those medium which involve writing and so much of it, even short stories, like, for example, Charlotte Perkins Gilman's short story, The Yellow Wallpaper, which was semi-autobiographical, actually effected a change in the practice by the doctor who treated her on the rest cure for women who were creative and had no outlets for their creativity. And so they went into deep depression. And she that wrote this story and has said that he did change his practice of that infantilizing women on a rest cure. So there's a wonderful poetry dating back to Phyllis Wheatley and all these other wonderful writers. So I want us to think in terms of all these medium, art, literature, music. Remember the protest songs in the Vietnam War. Let me see which other ones I want to mention. Just give me I lost my script here, just a moment. Anyway, all of these communication channels can be creative and also be entertaining conduits for sharing information and inspiring social justice, action, and human rights. So I'm going to share a few examples of the role various art forms contribute to social action and change in an overview before the others on the panel share their ideas and their experience. So I just want to say I am going to end up adding a little bit to my bio because by way of brief background, my graduate degree is in health communications, which is a multidisciplinary methodology that we apply to changing health behavior and advocating health promotion. And I did that work nationally and internationally around women's health issues and maternal and child health and family planning. And I'm not going to go into details of the methodology because it's quite complex. But I happen to have been deputy director of the largest AID, the first and largest AID funding for the Health Communications Project. And it was geared to those things I just mentioned. And it was very, very successful. It involves training, it involves collaboration, it involves messaging and taglines, and it's very research-based. But I can tell you that the outcomes were proof of the pudding because that strategic, multifaceted communication was proven to have worked wonders. And in the course of that work, I learned that everything from T-shirts to soap operas to posters and pencils, as well as various other media, can be conduits for urgently needed information and action steps. I also am a teacher. I teach now. I've taught a lot of university undergrads and graduate programs, but right now I teach adult learning programs, and I happen to be doing one right now on resistance movements. And it's really been an extraordinary experience to look at all the different ways that all these communication channels have been used for resistance movements. You know that I'm a columnist for newspapers and blogs, which are a political platform for me. I share the links on social media. I have a 6-page listserv who then pass it on to other people. And right now I'm teaching this class on resistance, both historic and contemporary resistance. And the idea came to me because of the times that we live in right now. I felt like it's important for people to begin, everybody, the public and all of us, to begin to realize that there are so many of these communication channels. So drawing from that course, I would like to just share a couple of quick examples in the way that the arts, all of the arts, can be social change agents. So in art, for example, think about Picasso's Guernica, think about Diego Rivero's murals, and think about Goya, the famous painting, with the old soldiers and the guns. Those are just a few. And actually, there's so many more in between them. And another group I want to mention, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Guerrilla Girls, but that is a group of feminist artists, women, and they're all anonymous. And they are known for their guerrilla warfare in terms of art. So what they do is they have they might be in front of a museum that doesn't have enough women artists with a big banner or poster. They might be flashing on a building. That's really guerrilla warfare when you flash a message on a building. They have really changed the way that museums are behaving and the way that art philanthropists are behaving and so forth. So and all they're really doing is anonymously showing these amazing graphics, political cartoons, posters, all of that kind of thing. Writers and poets have helped the world realize that, as Hannah Arendt said in covering the Eichmann trials, she said, we should not be, quote, just a leaf blowing in the whirlwind of time. And her message was, we must act against evil and aggression. Storytelling and bearing witness are ways to shape a future relationship to history. As one writer has said, in other words, literature is validating, it's instructive, and it's often life-altering, any kind of literature and any kind of art. As a memorist and a writer of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction myself, I like to think that our words are our monuments and our maps to the future. And that's why books like The Jungle, Hiroshima, The Fire Next Time, The Yellow Wallpaper, Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, I mean, I teach a whole courses on this stuff, all of them, especially second wave for me, second wave feminists who told the truth about their lives, made a huge difference it was one of the biggest movements of our lifetime. So just in closing, I want to say that various forms of media and messaging are really powerful tools. They can affect policy, they can persuade people, they can create participation when they involve consciousness in order to raise awareness, when they do work in coalition with other partners and collaboration to get the work done, and building a critical mass, which is why the messaging is so important. They also require dialogue. They require setting goals and action steps. Action steps in messaging are really important, especially in a time when we need to make our voices heard so that we really all can make a difference. So with that, I'm going to end this brief overview and hand it over to the next speakers who can enlighten us through their own work. And I thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you, Elayne. That was fascinating. I have to apologize. I was supposed to read each one of these intros in front of the person who was talking, and I read them all at once because I'm all charged up on coffee. So my fault, and I'm not going to do it again. And we're going to hear from Nancy Wolfe, who is a filmmaker, and she's going to tell us what she does. Go ahead. You there?
Yeah, I'm right here.
There you are.
So,
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I've been working in this field for over a decade. And I guess if you boil it down, I care about people. I care about human rights, voting rights, our planet, the environment, and clearly the impacts of war is something that troubles me greatly. I cover movements, I cover activists, I give a platform, and we create change. And so I'm actually going to show you a short clip, which is some projects that I've been working on actually while living in Vermont. So it's mostly remote working on those things. So with this clip, you will travel the globe with Alone Together, which is a very collaborative film that brought participants in 11 countries. You will also be shown some footage of my feature documentary, Rocky Flats, which is about community members and storytellers grappling with toxic legacy nuclear weapons grade waste. And the third film is The Other Side of the Sea, which is a short documentary about Ukrainian New Yorkers and Syrian New Yorkers using their art to basically support Ukraine or support the culture. And some of these Ukrainians were inspired by Zelensky when he made this plea to at the Venice Biennial when basically the war started. And basically he called out to the artists and he said, words can do so much, right? We're talking words can do so much, but art can also like grab you and it can communicate in something that the words can't. And so that is also the power of art. And so we can play the video now.
My soul is crying. My country now everywhere is blood, everywhere.
Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge parking lot that just popped up basically overnight.
Stand for freedom!
Stand for freedom!
There are so many questions. How it happened, where this virus is from.
There is no such thing as a safe level of exposure to weapons-grade plutonium.
Hey, can I ask you a question really quick before you go in? Do you know that at the center of the site is a nuclear Superfund site?
Special present for 2020.
We started to read some articles where Asian people who wore masks were getting harassed.
There's so many things about Rocky Flats that just make you feel like a crazy person.
Okay, great. That's that. I'm done. Thanks for watching.
Nancy, could you explain a little bit more about Rocky Flats? Because I've never heard of it, and I'm not quite sure what I'm kind of horrified, but I'm not sure I'm right to be horrified.
I can answer that, or should we? I can answer.
Just answer it now while the images.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah. So Rocky Flats is a former nuclear weapons plant just outside Boulder, Colorado. And it's now actually a national wildlife refuge. So it's been open to the public. And it's one of the sites where we made nuclear weapons from 1952 to basically 1989. So it's a complicated story, and I've been working on it for a long time because it's a complicated story. It is about just these different families and these different people and how they are impacted by nuclear waste, whether it's being scared about your pets, or it's being scared about your family members, or it's finding a home when there's nothing available in the Denver housing market.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah,
I just needed to, do you know you're walking into a wildlife preserve that's in nuclear contaminated?
yeah,
That kind of scared me. So
it's very scary.
that was the part okay, we'll come back to that. That's really interesting. Okay. Now we're going to move on to Jeanette. And Jeanette.
Hi.
You're there. And nobody could doubt that you're a creative person from the background that we're all seeing. It's your studio, obviously. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, the mess of my studio. So I'm going to just put on oh, it's already going. All right, great. This is a slideshow of my work. I'm a studio artist, research-based. I do it seems to have, hold on, sorry to be so wonky. There we go. What can I say? So my focus is on the patriarchy, basically, and I sort of see it as it's been around for 5,000 years, but it hasn't been here as long as we have, and there's other ways of creating a system that everyone can live under. And so, you know, my interest is in understanding it and trying to figure out how to make changes. And one of the things that's interesting to me when I think about art is that the patriarchy wouldn't be here without art and storytelling. That's what a big part of what embedded it in the system, right? Like there were the Greek stories, and then the Christian Bible stories, and so it's all about stories. It's all about storytelling and about art, and so it seems to me that we can use art and storytelling to change it and to create a system that's I like to think of contemporary issues in terms of a feminist point of view. So, you know, how would we look at climate change through a feminist lens? Or and that actually, just focusing on one issue, that led me into phytoremediation and understanding the importance of carrion beetles and carrion birds and how we deal with decaying flesh. It sends you into all sorts of interesting rabbit holes that are all important. And so I'm really just focused on my little neighborhood. So I try to gather people together to do sign painting and to have discussions about these issues and how they're affecting our own backyards, where there've been, 100-year-old dumps right out my backyard and, flowing into the Saxtons River. And so that's my work.
Okay. Then what were we looking at? These are drawings of yours or prints of yours on other paper, or could you just explain a little about that? Unmute.
Oh, I was that one. The work I do, the collage paintings I do are actually, I take Bible pages and religious text, that sort of thing, and collage the background. And then the images that I've used are from Maria Sibylla Merian, who was a fascinating artist from the 17th century. Audubon, who has a very, complicated history, right? So I'm sort of pulling things from his history, especially the 19th century, and relating how we're repeating these things now and how we keep repeating these patriarchal stories. This whole, the Comstock Act is like rejuvenated again 150 years later as a way of, controlling women's bodies. It's astounding, really. But that's what all of this work is about.
And also, aren't you with the books, the book banning, aren't you very?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my most recent one is taking religious text and maps of the states that are doing the book bans, and then creating new books, art books out of them, and using images from like the Renaissance, the Aquatilibus, and other books that they used as, they were sort of encyclopedic, but there was a lot of fantasy going on. They were creating sea monsters and all sorts of things that really weren't there. So it's just sort of questioning what are we banning and why are we banning these things? The hypocrisy and that sort of.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Then let's move on to Negina Azimi, who I hope I pronounced your name correctly. And are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Good.
There you are. Yay. And okay, ArtLord. Wow. We in Brattleboro are so grateful to have you guys here. But you better explain that you're probably not that happy about it.
Good evening, everyone. And we are very grateful that we ended up here in Brattleboro, Vermont, a very artistic town and a very supportive town for new Vermonters or refugees here. As Joyce read my bio, but before that, I would like to say that I apologize. I may not be able to talk very fast as you guys are speaking. So I have to think, I have to order my words, then I have to speak. So please bear with me. And while I'm talking, I would like to present the slideshow that I created for this program. And as Joyce mentioned in my bio, my name is Negina Azimi. I come from a country named Afghanistan, which is very famous in various ways. It's a country with a rich history dating 1,000 years, possesses natural beauty, stunning beauty, and a vibrant culture. A country which is well known for its historical places, historical structures, buildings, and a country which is well known for its agriculture, for its carpet weaving, and for its very delicious and natural fruits and emeralds, minerals, and other vibrant cultures that we have. A country which is well known as we can say a diverse community that can hold different tribes, different cultures, different colors, different faces, which we are all proud of us. Proud of that, but you all know that it's once a time Afghanistan was a very well-known country, and it was referred as a Paris of Central Asia, and we had a very vibrant and a very good historical stories that it's still alive, but you know, it's also a nation that has been burdened with recurring periods of conflicts and war. And I come from that country, and my background, I hold a law degree, but my most background is in art, and I work with ArtLords organization. That ArtLords after ArtLords established in 2014, and I joined ArtLords in 2017. And we wanted to preserve our culture, our heritage, and wanted to use art as a tool to maintain our culture and our history, and also to offer healings for our country, for our people. And as you all know, that a country or post-conflict societies that they want to establish themselves, they also struggle with other parts of societies, other aspects of war. On that time that we were doing art, Afghanistan were facing lots of conflicts and also lots of social adjustments. The one thing that we really wanted to fight against was corruption, and this is the first mural painting in Afghanistan, in Kabul city, two eyes with a very a strong message that I can see you, and it was a very direct message to all governmental and also opposite sides of community or country, that whatever you're doing, so people, we all are witness of your activities. And this two eyes became our symbol to pursue our art and to use it as a social change in our society. We used our art to support our military forces. We used art to maintain or preserve our culture, our music, our literatures. We utilize art as a powerful tool to communicate with our government and opposite sides of government, which that period of time, our opposite was the Taliban. And as you all mentioned, that one image has more power than thousands of words. And we use those eyes as a symbol. And whenever we had a issue or a concern in our societies, so we painted that issue in front of those eyes to reflect or to talk with government. And we also used art as a tool to speak with the opposite side of country if they are willing to accept peace and to come and sit together and work together to build Afghanistan. We wanted to use art as a tool to show prominent faces of females that they were working in our society and they wanted to make change. And we wanted to have a very clear message to those that they wanted to neglect the role of women in our society. And these paintings belongs to series of hopes, and we wanted to promote hopes and love among our people.
Hmm.
So yeah, this was the slideshow that I wanted to talk about. And we as ArtLords, we didn't work as an artist, we work as an activist in our society. We didn't create self-expressions, but we create our social concerns. We wanted to show our social concerns through our arts. We did lots of awareness among our people. We did lots of art therapy among people, and we use our arts for social change.
Were any of those murals destroyed by the Taliban?
Unfortunately, all of our murals were whitewashed by Taliban. The first week that they entered or they took control of the country, they whitewashed all of the murals, which was very sad. But at the meantime, it was very, it was very powerful that they couldn't digest that message. So that's why they whitewash all of that murals.
Yeah, it scared them.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to add, Negina?
Well, actually, here's Abdullah, and he will continue.
Okay. Abdullah Hafizi is here, and another art lord. And say hello, Abdullah.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. How's it going, everyone?
I just realized he's the only male.
Yeah, you're not going to have an easy time when we start taking apart.
I can't believe.
Thank
I
God
think
you're here.
feminism is working very well in here. Yeah. So yeah, my name is Abdullah Hafizi, and I've been involved and active in art section for a lot of time, but there was a big gap. But since 2021, I've been doing a lot of art individually and also with a group named ArtLord, which Negina is my friend and my colleague as well. And we have been doing so many art in Afghanistan, which were whitewashed. But now, since we have moved to USA, Brattleboro, Vermont specifically, we have been still continuing our art, most specifically big murals or giant murals, which you have visibly, seen most of them around the town, which I will share with you all. Speaking of how art can affect the social change, there's so much to say about that. Millions of things. But the most powerful ones that I can share from my perspective that art always can it can raise awareness, and it can touch or shine those specific parts of issues or social or political issues that were like uh, they were silenced, they were never shared, or they were never discussed about. So art can do that. Art can touch those hard or sensitive conversations which nobody is like ready to talk about. But if you just touch that with your art, you can invigorate or you can elicit or evoke all those sensory parts of human beings that they will start talking about that. Or maybe we can use art for our personal expression, which I do for myself. But that's not just like I express myself. I have a lot of other things that I want to convey, and they are most specifically social issues. Speaking of social issues, there are so many things that nowadays are going around in the world, like the situation in Afghanistan, the women's right, children's right, like women's are all banned and everything in education, going to park, going to bazaar, like they cannot do anything. And our art can just be a voice for those all voiceless people. And there are other topics that is very sensitive, that's LGBTQ these days. And that's one of the things that I also want to talk about or convey or express through my art, which is very sensitive. We cannot easily talk through words, but through art, where I can show it and people can just like, let's think about this. What is this art about? And what is there's a flag of LGBTQ or rainbow color? So people like can be uh like they it can just touch them and then they can start talking about. Or there can be a lot of beliefs, norms around the society that are not easily acceptable, or they are very obsolete or old, but we can just talk about it through art and bring changes. There are other things or issues that have been so much after like 2020 or in the modern world right now that we can talk about, or the issues like Black lives. Art has been used for Black Lives Matter movement. Art has been used for climate change, whether that's like visual, performing, or written, all that. Art has been used for war, like to stop war, to stop genocide of specific tribes or ethnicities. Art has been used for pandemic or COVID-19 awareness. Art has been used like for street art, murals that can do a lot of various movements and so much more. And I would like to share some of the art that's well, Negina, as a part of our member, she has shown some of the art that we did back in Afghanistan, and she also spoke about where we came from and how that specific region looked like. She touched some of the aspects of that region. But here, what we have been doing so far that we are in Afghanistan, sorry, in Brattleboro in Vermont, I would like to show all a few things that we have done so far in the USA. So let's start about the first mural that we did as a collective. That was for this Experience Good. This was our very first small mural, and like we started doing as a group for the Experience Good. And then we did a big giant mural with two of the local artists. You guys might have seen, or like this is very obvious on High Street with Daniel Chiachu and Calvin Latourie. We did a collaboration with them, and they're local artists. Daniel Chiachu owns First Print Proof. Well, we just did this as a group. Here are some other images of this mural. Well, this wall, if you we do have some images of this wall which was empty, which was not painted. You can see like how art can change so much. Here, there is anything political or social, but to just decorate the town. But it's so beautiful that we can still talk about it so much. And sometimes I believe like everything happens for a reason. All these whole time, this wall was waiting for us to paint something on this wall.
Yeah.
Like why it didn't happen before us? This is the thing that it sometimes comes to my mind. And this is Daniel, who we worked with, and our own team, the ArtLords. Right after that, we did some other murals. Yeah, Food Works. I think Food Works is also a very another obvious mural that we did as a group. This is the complete image. So we recreated. Sometimes I believe that we do not need to create new things. We can recreate our old stuff. And this is what we did actually this year, that we recreated our mural that we had done back in Afghanistan. I believe Negina showed you a part of this heart, and this is what we did. We wanted to represent our very own style or idea or work and paint it in Brattleboro with a different meaning almost. And when we painted this in Afghanistan, the wall was so famous by the name of Harmony Wall, and it really means harmony, peace, and um, community. We did a collaboration with Museum of Brattleboro, Museum of Art, Brattleboro here, and there are some images that this was also a collaboration, not just our own, but with a group of uh, artists from Rhode Island. Their name is Tape Art, and we did some art with the tape. And what we did is we recreated our old art from Afghanistan, but with a new medium, and that is tape. We did almost 17 murals around the town, and those were all recreation of our own very old art, but with a new medium. And this was so much welcomed by the public around the town, and everyone really loved it. Well, this whole few murals that we did around the town with the tape, they didn't stick for a long time. A lot of people didn't have the chance to see them. So maybe if you guys want to see more of them, I can share the links with you and you guys can see. The other mural that we did was with the Vital Voices, which they work for women's right, women empowerment, and we did a mural. And we are lucky and we are honored that Hillary Clinton just came and watched and like just gave us a few moments and appraised our work, our mural, which was really great of her. This is another image of that mural that we did in DC, Washington, DC, with Vital Voices, which was for women's right and women empowerment. And here is another glimpse or image of that. We presented our mural right on the screen live. It was telecasted live on that time. And another mural, not just one mural, but a group of murals. We did a collaboration with Putney International High School. And there were 4 murals that we did all together. And the very last collective mural that we did was with the Counterpart International. I have just an image of that here. This was also for women empowerment and women uplifting. and women's rights. There were 14 countries came all together, and they painted their country's flags inside the outline of the pigeons above the woman's head, above the woman's hair. And this was like coming all together as in a solidarity and sharing their own culture, language, which was a great experience. And a few more exhibitions that we did all together. Yeah, I think that was a lot, I guess.
Kept going. That was pretty cool. And we know how beautiful the murals are in Brattleboro, so I think we benefited from this very much.
Thank you so much.
We are looking for questions for our panelists from the audience. We have not yet come up with any, but now is the time. And until we get some, I have some questions of my own. Well, since the patriarchy has been discussed at great length in the past hour, I was wondering, and maybe Jeanette, you were the person who brought it up, could you explain how we got into this situation?
That's funny. Well, Gerda Lerner is wrote a really good book called The Creation of Patriarchy. That's a really good place to start if people want to understand how we got to where we are, how it began. And she talks about it being starting about 5,000 years ago, and it was at the time it was thought to be a good thing because women could have some protection. That was sort of the selling point. But I mean, there's a lot to it. One of the things that's really important to understand is the difference between matriarchal and matrilineal, and she really talks about that. And so it really had to do with inheritance and how, as people started to settle in one place and collect objects and property and homes, when a woman would die, whatever it was that was in their possession would go to like the brother or somebody like that, and her partner would, or the father of the children, were left out. And so that's when the matriarchal or matrilineal line went to patriarchal. You see what I mean?
I do, but when I was growing up, and of course I'm a second wave feminist myself, the story we heard was that women could create life, and therefore we were worshipped justifiably and adored, and it was this big mystery. And then all of a sudden men figured out that they had something to do with it, and they were stronger, and that was when we were toast. But that's not what you're saying. So have you heard that story?
Yeah, but there were a lot of things culminating at the same time, and one of the really important ones was inheritance and lineage, and and men wanted to know who was the father. They were understanding that they had a role in it, and so one of the things that they did, which is I think important in the storytelling and art part, is that they took away all the female goddess stuff about giving birth and life and that, and it became a male thing, that women were secondary actually to creating life. And that's how they usurped the story and started the importance of patriarchal over matriarchy and goddess worshiping.
Yeah, okay, that's making sense. It's just that when we talk about what you said, patriarchy wouldn't be here without stories and art. Well, I like stories and art, but I sure as hell don't like the patriarchy. So,
Right.
and we've heard about it in Afghanistan. Now we've heard about it. Well, we all know about it here. So, Elayne, you want to chip in? You're a writer on the subject. Unmute, Elayne.
So there's a lot of, and there's the history of women and the patriarchy and feminism and all that kind of stuff is just profoundly deep and interesting. One of the theories that is interesting to me is that, you know, at the time when people were nomadic, you know, women were very valuable because they were basically feeding the family. They were doing the planting and all of that. And they were, everybody was kind of like in a way equal because they all had a role in survival. But once you got to where they were, they stopped being, they became agrarian and land became competed for and everything became a possession of what was on your land. And that sort of included women. But the other thing that's really interesting to me, and then just, well, what's interesting to me about that is that the other theory that I think makes a lot of sense is that women were men were very threatened by women because women could bleed and not die. And warriors, of course, always risk bleeding and dying when they went on their warrior stuff. And so the combination of you can bleed over and over again and not die, and you can bring life was pretty terrifying to some of these guys, you know, and the women became possessions. The other thing that happened in the industrial age and urbanization was the woman question. You know, before that it was, well, we don't have to ask what are we going to do with the women because we knew what we were going to do with them. They were going to bear children, they were going to grow food, and they were going to sew the clothes and all the rest. But once urban life took over and the industrial revolution that caused a lot of urban poverty, the question was, well, what are we going to do with the women? And that question continued, and people like Freud really played into it. So there's this continuum of history and action that kept reducing and reducing and reducing women's status and increasing patriarchal control, especially if you look at what happened in the industrial age when there were, you know, people like, well, even more modern, people like Ford or all the bankers and the, you know, that became mega wealthy and then they could kind of own women because women had to marry for security, for financial security. And also Charlotte Perkins Gilman makes the point that not only did they have to marry for security, but it was the only way to legitimize their sexuality was to bear children. So there are all these interesting theories about what it was all about. And then finally, you know, we blew the lid off of it, starting way back, including Seneca, not way further back than even Seneca Falls, and then this Alice Paul movement, National, you know, Women's Party, and then the second wave. I mean, it's a fascinating continuum and set of theories.
It is, and it's very interesting. Abdullah and Negina, would you like to talk about why Afghanistan is so repressive against women?
Yeah, that is very true. I just wanted to, because you guys said, like, specifically, Joyce, that you expressed you like stories. Well, obviously, Americans do. So, yesterday I was in class. I'm doing creative writing. So, I wrote the first draft of a story, which happened 20 years ago, and I just wrote it right after 20 years. It's very funny that it happened in 2003 and now 2023. And this is about a woman who is my relative. I don't know, I do not want to disclose the story or what is about, but it's like that woman was so oppressed for her basic needs and rights. Like she was not able to decide for herself. That story tells that thing. And we were in the class, we were divided into groups, and I had to share my story, and then they had to share their story, their writings, I mean. But she didn't have anything of her personal story rather than having a fiction writing. So when she wrote it, she reflected on that and she told me, like, why don't you just write these all to like on for a bigger media, like people can, these are interesting stories. People will really like it and will like to know about it more. And it is also an interesting story. It has a lot of like things that it's engaging. So yeah, speaking of oppressed, that's very true. Women have been oppressed and suppressed for a very long time. But so we have to like if we're talking about the oppression, we have to also talk about the who is doing that, why it's happening, how to just find a solution for that, or how to raise voice, how to raise awareness about that. So there are so many things, and yes, for sure, women have been uh, oppressed, but it's not that uh, women were threatened before. No, in the very beginning of the Afghanistan's history, women were always side by side with the men. But later on, with different invasions happen in Afghanistan, or different ideas or religions came up, they complicated things, and then they set rules that were very like putting women in a box. So and then people took different ideas of those religion rules or dogmas or norms, and they really pressed women in a very small circle. So that's why women are very oppressed and suppressed, because
Well, it's
there are so many rules now.
It's horrifying what we see in
Yeah,
Afghanistan. But
exactly. Like just right now, this is a big example. Women cannot go to school, university, park, bazaar. What else? Like even salons, beauty parlor salons are like they closed it. They they banned it, and they like damaged all the salons. That was the last thing for all the women was remaining, that where women could get together and talk and share their stories, but that is also banned. So like what else is remaining for women? Nothing. And what made that? We have to talk or discuss about what made that.
well, that might be
Religion.
out of our purview today. But I do
Yeah.
want to mention, because we're supposed to stick to the idea of art, but I would
Yeah.
rather talk about the patriarchy. Anyway, we have John Tuthill wants us to know that there's a book called The Patriarchs, The Origins of Inequality. The author, Angela Saini, Saini, spoke at the Brattleboro Literary Festival last Saturday, so it's probably available, her talk online somewhere. Again, Angela, Saini, and the book is The Patriarchs, The Origin of Inequality. Someone else wants to know, what are the current myths that perpetuate patriarchal dominance here in the USA as well as the Mideast? And I don't know if we can connect that with art or not, but I do know that I found today in the Times a story about a woman, Diana Shabbili's book, Minor Detail. She's a Palestinian author, and she was asked not to appear at some prestigious celebration because she's a Palestinian author. So there you have someone who has been canceled just because of the current war in the Mideast. And
it's just, you could think about book banning, right? Like what's going on right now with book banning against anything about race, anything about LGBTQ, anything that's outside of this white patriarchal norm is being banned or put into question. And an anti-war, I mean, you could, every single issue is the way I think of it is you can look at it through the lens of patriarchy and also through a lens of feminism and how we might change it if we change our viewpoint about it. So you can think about climate change and how the climate is affected by the patriarchy.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
So one example of there are 2 points I want to make, and there are many more I could make, but one of them is, if somebody like Larry Summers, who was at Harvard, who I think was president and had to step down, if somebody like Larry Summers can say in the 20th or 21st century that women are just not as smart as men in the STEM fields, they're just not as good at math and science. I mean, there you see how broadly and how hierarchical and how threatening that women are to these men who hold the positions of power. The second thing I would share with you is that in the international scene, during the Decade for Women, where the conferences were held, in Nairobi and Copenhagen and Mexico City, and then in Beijing, I was at 2 of those meetings, and they had to deal with language. The language of the UN documents, they had to resolve language issues, and so like the Vatican and the conservative countries did not want the words family planning involved. They didn't want the word abortion involved. They thought everything was a buzzword for abortion, and also they argued that they argued that it's very clear to them that women are less than men, and therefore it is equitable for women to get less than men. It's not equal. Then they have to give same thing to this, so, and even in foreign assistance, even in the mid 20th century, the foreign assistants never mentioned that all of the rights that they were suggesting, they never said that they applied to women. And it was a woman named Mildred Marcy who wrote a sentence to add to the appropriations of USAID that simply basically said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, and all of the elements of these resolutions shall apply equally to women. But who was going to introduce it in the Congress? And she knew Charles Percy. And so she said, oh, I know Chuck Percy, I'll ask him to do it. And that's how we got the Percy Amendment, but it was really the Mildred Marcy Amendment. So you can all through, and the whole Freudian stuff and the whole, I mean, in every sector, whether it was medicine or science or art or whatever, women were continued to have to fight for visibility and for credit. I mean, a lot of women who should have won Nobel Prizes for science never got added to the mix when their male colleagues got the awards, So it just goes on and on and on, and it's really astounding to me that we have gone so far backwards in the 21st century that we're now going to have to fight for birth control. We're going to have to fight for equal pay again. We're going to have to fight for childcare and for just so much that we thought we had pretty much, progressed, but now we're back again. Just like the way the women in Afghanistan for 20 years experienced freedom and equality and liberty and all, and then now they're back in the dark ages, and now we're catapulting back to the Renaissance.
Yes, well,
may I add something? Is that possible? Is that okay?
Nancy, yeah, Nancy.
Oh.
Okay, thank you. I like the way that I think about it is, there's a few things here. I've been focusing on the nuclear weapons issue for a long time, and that is, it's so men, but a specific type of men making these decisions. But when you think about all the movements, which is what I care about the most, generally a lot of them are women, and mostly women of color, for the environmental movements, for a lot of movements, current movements. But that's sort of because a lot of women were just, like, well, we have to do something, we have families, we have responsibilities, we have to work, we have to, do all these things. So, so they're the leaders. So, it's like, yes, these men screwed up, and who is deciding with all these wars are, some men who have had questionable judgment in the past, potentially, maybe. Yeah, I think that the solutions we are finding are not from the same sources that they were sort of started upon. And so, as mostly female artists here, I kind of think that that's our sort of responsibility of, like, unfortunately we have to do it. And that's my take.
That's very good. I wanted to, you reminded me that the work I do for Vermont Business Magazine is profiling. And my idea way back when I started this was that I had been writing about social justice issues for a long time, and I could not see any movement being made in social issues. And the poor remained the poor. Nothing happened. So I thought, well, let's start putting positivity into the air. Let's just make stories about people who are doing good things in Vermont. And so I'm at my second decade now of writing stories about people who have done very, very good, positive things in Vermont. I never run out of people to write about. And they are business people and artists and writers and leaders and politicians and unfortunately a few physicians, one of whom made house calls. So I've been doing this work very, very seriously to put positive energy in the air, not ever thinking I would see it relate in my own time come back at me. But lately I have been writing about women in their 40s, women who are leading major organizations in Vermont and who are doing amazingly good things. And I am very excited right now, and only in Vermont, because I only do that work. I think that there is a small revolution going on of women who are finding solutions. And this is the woman who leads Green Mountain Power, the woman who leads Vermont Housing Finance Authority. They're not minor organizations. And they're new thinking, new creativity going into trying to make the world at least a slightly better place. So thank you for letting me get that in. That's a plug for me and the people I write about. We have a question. How are these times reflected in your art? Are you seeing any improvement? What do you suggest we do about this? Okay, so that's a great question. And let's start with Elayne and work our way back down to Abdullah. Elayne, go.
Yeah, so I think that as I said, there are many channels and many ways to communicate and for social change, and I'm not belittling the importance of opinion editorials, about letters to the editor, petitions, and all of that kind of thing. But if you and dialogue, interpersonal dialogue, interpersonal dialogue is where persuasion happens. So that's that. Having conversations, it's very hard to have a conversation. Well, I haven't find it hard to have a conversation with a Republican, let alone, whoever. But the thing is that that's what we have to come to, is interpersonal communication and persuasion and educating others who don't take the time to educate themselves, like get the facts about what's going on, or what's the history of the whole Palestinian Israeli conflict and all things like that. So I think that each of us can take small steps and take big steps. We can, volunteer for organizations and show up at things, and but also understand that our own voices and our own testimonials and our own life stories matter. And the more we share them, the more we put a human face on them. And I loved Abdullah's I'm forgetting, can't find the other woman's name, but I loved it because they really got it, that visual messaging is really, really important. And you don't have to be a great artist, or you don't have to be a great writer. To oratory, if you're a public speaker, speak with passion, write from your gut, write about what you care about, and just have a presence, because every little piece of presence matters in different ways, whether it's raising awareness, or whether it's persuading people, or it's giving them action steps. They want to help, but they don't know what to do. All of that comes into this idea of strategic communications.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You ready to Nancy?
We have a question from one of the person here on the chat. I think her name is Kate. she has asked, what are the current myths that perpetuate patriarchal dominance here in the USA and as well as in the Middle East? Well, I do have answers for the Middle East, but I can't really say about the USA actually.
Okay, we moved on from that, but quickly.
Yeah.
Abdullah, quickly.
Okay, yeah. So there are few things that, yeah, honestly perpetuate patriarchy, and it's like it's very saddening that we are still not coming out of that. But you know, the first very point is Islamic law oppression, which Islamic law is not actually what the priests have given their own perception. They have taken their own perceptions. But Islam it's a religion of a peace. It's very open. Like you have to choose. You have the right to choose whether to follow or not or anything. But yeah, these priests, whatever they have perceived from the rules, they have thrown on women specifically and then them in a box or a circle, like a lot of rules on women. So like, and there are so many little things for women that they have to do this, that, and just.
Yes, Abdullah, I'm sorry to cut into you, but I think unless you have a solution, we have to move on.
Yeah,
we have lots of descriptions. It's a big. We need a whole conversation about this. When I hope you're listening.
I'm listening.
Yes,
but we do need to move on to what people can do about this.
Right.
Joyce, can I just add? I'm sorry. Can I just add one thing? I'm sorry. I just want to add one thing. When I talk about communicating and interpersonal communication, don't be afraid to contact your congresspeople and your president. That's what makes democracy. You know, let them know how you feel, because I can tell you from having worked in Washington, D.C., they do count the calls. They do have the staff reads the stuff and responds, but there's change in numbers. That's why I said about raising awareness and coalition building and critical mass. We can help to create a critical mass. Sorry.
Amen. Okay. Nancy, there?
Hi, Joyce, could you repeat that original question? Because it's been like a little bit since you read it, so I can just answer it properly.
What do you see? How are these times reflected in your art? How are you seeing any improvement, and what do you suggest we do about it?
Okay, yeah.
I
have some answers. So one is actually a film that inspired me, which is a film called Dark Circle. I don't know if anyone saw that here a long time ago. It was in the first season of POV on PBS, and it's what my film was inspired by. I feel like my film is the part 2 to it. So what that film did was an enormous. It started a movement. People started knowing about this particular site, Rocky Flats in Colorado. I mean, still not a lot of people know about it, but a lot more. And then there was you know, a book that came out that someone wrote, and that was their you know, way of showcasing what was going on in their neighborhood. So a book was written and more people read. Groups were created from the inspiration of that book of, oh, I didn't know that my neighborhood people were sick. Oh, let me find out. And with, you know, sort of the film process for making a documentary is you talk to so many people, you know, so many more people than are ever going to fit in your movie. So, you know, you're kind of part of it with them. So any big, you know, positive thing that happens, like I want to record that. I want to celebrate that. I want to give a visual representation of that feeling, you know? So like there are the ways that this will change, and we'll never, you know, it's rare that you will get the credit or like really be able to actually dial down and say, okay, it was exactly because of this movie and this time, but I do impact filmmaking. So, you know, what I want is for people to watch and for people to be exposed to the information. So however you choose to accept this information is kind of the right the right way to accept the information, but you're just part of the movement. Like you become kind of, by filming them, you become part, not necessarily you are in their movement, but I mean, you become part of what they're doing, because you're working together and you're collaborating. So that's what I know that ArtLords, they've been talking about your collaborations, but my work is like so collaborative. And I think that's really part of it, because when you are working with your, like, I mean, BCTV, like, right, we're connecting with all these different members in the community. So when you can do that, you can kind of create that, you're saying, positive feeling, you're working on something together. It's a way to connect with other people in this way that is totally unexpected and relates to the work itself, in the fact that that the thing that you're putting out is important to both of you, but the what you get from that collaboration and that creativity kind of coming alive together is a whole other thing that just adds to the work itself.
I have a question. Where has it been seen?
Which I showed 3 movies, or I showed a few different projects. So we have 2 that have been shown. So one is still in progress, still in editing, which is the feature documentary. So that one takes a little bit longer. The 2 shorts have been screened. The most recent screening was at the Refugee Film Festival in Turkey, in Izmir, and that was The Other Side of the Sea, which is about Ukrainian refugees, Syrian refugees, and immigrants. And it's actually, the director is an immigrant herself. She's from Taiwan. And so she also has a special relationship with Ukraine in the connection. And I've been learning a lot about the situation in Taiwan too. But so being the producer, so I'm producing her work, so I'm working with her and I'm seeing what I can do to help, right? So, I bring something, she brings something else, and, there we go. Yeah. There we have something.
I understand that, Nancy, but the Rocky Flats movie?
That is not, that you just saw, you saw footage that, of a film that isn't available yet. So it's coming
okay.
soon.
But do you think about, it might be shown at a film festival or something like that, but do you think about getting it out there in a bigger way to help other people, get on board and understand what's out there? Is that part of your process?
That's an entirely part of the process.
Because I think that's something important, so that you're changing or educating more and more people, not just dropping it at a festival.
You're taking over
now, and the festival is just a tiny. I'm sorry?
I was just asking Lynn if she was taking over.
No, I
we have 3 more people we have to hear of.
Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to make a general point, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, no, Lynn, your point, if I can just take that for a second, your point is correct in that it's actually the point. Your point is the point,
right?
Which is that, like, by collaborating with other people, we can build this community, and then together we have success, and we can bring that in different environments. And the whole point is to bring these stories to someone that has never heard anything about it, doesn't know. Maybe even for me with nuclear waste, maybe there's a dump site and we don't really know, or it's something where someone knows but you don't know, and it's in your neighborhood. So bringing projects in and working with universities, working with organizations, working with community groups, that's where change happens. It's not going to be at the festival. I mean, I guess if you picked up some crazy deal and you got free advertising everywhere and whatever, but the point is community connection, and it's kind of the point that you start and the point that you end with. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Can we move on to Jeanette now? And should I read the question again? It's, how are these times reflected in your art? Are you seeing any improvement? What do you suggest we do about this?
I'm going to start with the what do you suggest we do about this?
Okay.
Because I think I was pretty clear about how I'm addressing the issues in my art. But I think that the question I most often go back to is the idea that patriarchy does not continue without our complicity. And so I'm always asking myself, how am I complicit? And I am always surprised by my own complicity. I'm always surprised by it, even now. And I've been asking myself this question for decades, right? Like, it's so ingrained in our system to think a particular way about anything that it's surprising when we find ourselves complicit in it. And so I think having those conversations with the people around you about complicity, and I don't mean that in a harsh way, but in a surprising and educational way. It's amazing. And I do that in my work, and I hope that I present that in my work so that people can ask that question of themselves too. Like, I hadn't thought of myself as being complicit in patriarchy, and how can I think about something in a different way?
Could you give one example of complicity, just so we know what you're thinking?
Yeah, that's a good, oh gosh. Think about weddings. Like, think about gender. Like, gender to me has become it's such an interesting thing now. And as a middle-aged woman, I keep saying to young people, like, you don't have a better ally than a middle-aged woman. Like, gender to me and to my friends is like, I don't know what. I've gone through menopause. I'm like, my body is like, what is my body now? So I think thinking about gender and thinking about, your complicity in gender and ideas about gender and ideas about women and men, and how is it anybody's business to decide what gender they are? That's a really big one.
That's a good example.
Pardon?
I said that's a good example. Yeah. We're almost out of time, and I do want to hear from Negina. So
okay, well, I'm there. Thank you for asking.
Negina, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. How are these times reflected in your art? We've answered that. Are you seeing any improvement? Well, that's a hard question. And what do you suggest we do about this?
For me, improvement, being an artist and turn into activist is a completely improvement for myself. And working as a self-expression, then turn to general expression was improvement. And then working in my country, then coming back here and rebuilding my life and doing the same thing, advocating for rights, for human rights, for women's rights, and remembering all those credits, all those sacrifices. So it's for me improving, and I will actually, I start as a mural painting in Afghanistan. We are doing the same thing here. And we also use our art as a tool for offering healing. And we work with many schools, with the students, and we work for mental health. So it's all improvement. And I can see that how art can bring people together, and how it can be a very create a big movement together. So it's all improvement that I can see.
Yes, very good answer. Abdullah, have you come up with some solutions?
Well, like this is a whole new change, a big change for us, that we have moved to USA. We are rebuilding and restarting a whole new life from like zero. We didn't have anything. So yes, I have been seeing a very visible change in my life and myself. So change and improvement comes from within, from one's person. When you change yourself, you improve yourself, then you can do something for your family, friends, and people are surrounding you. When you're not changed, you're not improved, how can you do something? So that's the thing. I'm improving myself right now. I'm educating myself as much as I can. But beside that, I have been specifically talking and we're talking about LGBTQ rights or gender rights. People like in the USA, I know everyone has their rights, all the LGBTQ community, but in Afghanistan, no. I have been also speaking publicly about this issue here in Brattleboro or like wherever my voice uh, raised or went, but also about women's right and the entire people of the Afghanistan and other people around the world who are oppressed and suppressed. So I've been like doing as much as I can around my profiles on social media or wherever panel discussions like this I get. I'm honored to come and talk about all these issues. So yeah, improvement is very visible to me that I've been doing. But this is a great example right now where I'm like openly speaking about, which 20 or 2 years ago I was not able to speak about. I couldn't even bring the word LGBTQ to my mouth. But right now I can easily, without any fear, I can do it. So this is a big improvement right now, and I'm very hoping for the future that I can be doing a great work for the LGBTQ and for the women and a lot of people.
Wow, thank you. That's a great answer. Okay, I think we could talk about this for the next 3 hours. But I think we're going to hand it over to Lynn to wrap it up. And thank you, everyone, for a most interesting conversation. And we're getting a lot of compliments in the chat. So I guess other people have enjoyed it as well. Lynn?
Okay.
Money.
Yeah, I wanted to thank everybody for coming. You don't need to see me at this point. And I do want to mention that this is part of the Media Mentoring Project that is part of the Commons and Vermont Independent Media. We could always use a little aid from time to time in terms of donations, etc. I lost probably a lot of our audience at this point, but thank you all for coming. Don't forget, we have another interesting event coming up at the end of November, and you'll be hearing about that as well. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, all of our participants, and thank you for the people that came out to hear the conversation. And we'll keep it going.
And thank you, BCTV.
And thank you, BCTV. Thank you very much. We couldn't do it without them. Thank you, Elayne, and thank you, Nolan.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, everyone.